Today's episode is very special, and it's not just because it's about open source, but it's also about the very special guest that we have today with us. Someone who has been instrumental in shaping the open source landscape and has been a driving force behind some of the most impactful projects in the industry. He's a leader, a visionary, and a true open source advocate. Ladies and gentlemen, we are thrilled to welcome Pratik Wadher, the Senior Vice President of Developer Experiences at Intuit. Pratik has been a key player in the open source community with significant contributions to projects like Argo. His insights and leadership have really helped shape Intuit's approach to open source to making it a leader in the field. So buckle up as we dive into an engaging candid chat with Pratik, exploring his journey into the world of open source, his views on its future, and some fascinating anecdotes from his illustrious career. Welcome to the show, Pratik.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Actually, pleasure to be here in India. And as we kicked off Oktoberfest yesterday, this is a lot of energy and passion. So I'm looking forward to this.
Awesome. So before we actually start with the podcast, so how's the journey to India shaping up? We just kicked off the Hacktoberfest. We had around 150 external audience, and we had a great time. So how was your journey to India, and how was the Hacktoberfest?
Well, first of all, it's always great to come here because I get to meet a lot of our team in India, and that personal connection, is always great. Right. What was special again yesterday was Hacktoberfest. I actually did not expect to see the number of people that we had, both internal and external. So I'm really looking forward to see what comes out of that actually, because we just kicked it off yesterday. So
Yep.
yeah.
We have a month-long, wait for this, but yeah, I'm really optimistic for this year.
Yeah.
Hacktoberfest.
Yeah.
It was a pretty good coincidence to have you in India during
Yeah.
October.
Yes. No, I love it. Thank you.
Yeah, I would like to say the stars are just aligned for this.
Yeah.
Awesome. So we just gave a very minimal intro about you, but we'd really like to know from your experience, right? What was your career journey been like, and how did open source come into your journey?
I'm a very new entrant to open source, right? I've been a user of open source for a long time. Right? My career is been mostly focused on startups. So my first job out of school was a startup, and I've been in various startups along the way. And one of the things you learn when you're doing startups is you're really looking for velocity, speed to market. And so the goal really is to figure out how best you can create a product without reinventing everything. And that's where open source comes in, right? Because you can actually start to shape a product by using the work that has actually been done by others in the community.
Awesome. And I think you've also spearheaded the Argo project from scratch, right? And first of all, personally, I'm working with batch processing platform at Intuit, and we heavily leverage Argo workflows and Argo events. And of course, being an open source project, we have thousands of communities and companies really using Argo at really huge scale. So how did that come to be from an open source perspective and a startup perspective both?
Yeah, I think I think it was in 2015, I was noticing a trend where large enterprises were essentially moving to the cloud, or at least starting their journey to cloud. And I've been in the enterprise space and in the distributed systems and system space for quite a while. So when I was observing this, I figured, that the current generation of tools for building software, deploying software, were not going to be adequate for the cloud. So this is really what led me to create a startup with two other co-founders, and with the sole goal of actually helping enterprises move to the cloud. And as we embarked on that journey, one of the things that we quickly realized was that there was a need for large-scale, deployment, workflow management, and then things like canary deployments, rollouts across the industry. Right? So this is kind of what started Argo, and Argo originally started as a workflow management software, and then in 2018. We were actually acquired by Intuit. So Intuit had been on a journey to the cloud, and had realized that they needed to leapfrog, from where they were currently, which is they were doing a lift and shift approach to moving to the cloud. But the industry was changing around them, and this led them to actually acquire Applatix to build Intuit's modern SaaS platform, which is what we use for all of our products today. And when we came to Intuit, the one thing we quickly realized was that we needed a quick deployment solution. So Argo was born. We had Argo workflows, but at Intuit we actually created Argo CD, which is our continuous deployment solution. And then as the community grew, we had other companies that started, engaging. So, for example, BlackRock, which is a financial company, contributed Argo events. And Argo rollouts, which is the other project, came about because we needed a mechanism to do rollouts and also progressive deployment and rollback. So this is how Argo is, and it's been hugely successful by any open source standard. It is currently used by over 2,000 companies, publicly referenced. We have over 800 developers that contribute to it across the world now. And it's the fastest growing project within the Cloud Native Computing Foundation, right? So
that's awesome.
So I think this is an amazing, project and a journey, right?
Yep. And yesterday in the Hacktoberfest, we also came to know that Argo has actually graduated from CNCF as well, right? So what are some learnings that you would attribute to for Argo's success?
Yeah, so the CNCF has a number of stages through which a project goes, right? You're usually, you start out in the sandbox, you graduate to an incubated project where you suddenly start getting a little bit more help from the foundation, and then you graduate. And graduation really means that you have achieved the usage level, and then the awareness of the project. It's solving critical problems in the industry, but moreover, it's actually at a point where industries or enterprises can start to adopt it. So when you get to that stage, the biggest learning I think for us was things like compliance, security became very critical, right? And that's really where we needed to focus a lot, right?
And you want to tell us more about the ArgoCon that's coming up?
ArgoCon is, actually in 2021, I forget, 2021 maybe. We actually had our first Argo conference. And, it came to the realization that Argo had grown, it had grown, had a large community. There was a lot of conversations and discussions going on in the community, and reached a point where there were suggestions that we should come together as a community. So we actually launched the first ArgoCon in 2021 in person, right after the pandemic. We had over 2,000 people that attended it across the globe, people flying into Mountain View. Very successful, and actually a lot of energy and passion that came in from the people that were using it, right? So, and we've continued that trend. It's just grown more. So we're actually getting ready for ArgoCon in November, which will be co-hosted with KubeCon North America. So we are expecting a lot more people to be attending this year. So and it'll be exciting to see that.
That must be a great feeling. The project that started on your laptop, having a conference, and that co-hosted.
An idea. Yes, you always dream about getting projects to this stage. So. But it's not just me, right? This has been a journey for Intuit, but it's been a journey by the community. I mean, the community really powers, the project, right? So it's incredibly fulfilling and satisfying to see the community growing right now, right? And we as Intuit, of course, we are the creators of Argo. We get a front seat to see how it's all produced, but more and more I see, the community is actually contributing, driving, shaping the project, which is great.
Awesome. Cool. So now let's take a segue from our Argo experience. Now we want to talk about your experience with open source and how the shift from developer to leader kind of impacts things, right? So, for example, your transition from a developer to leader. So how has your perspective on open source changed?
I would say it hasn't changed a whole lot. I still believe in the power of open source,
Mhm.
the fact that collaboration actually helps drive innovation and actually helps drive velocity, right?
Yep, true.
Because you're harnessing the power of a larger community to help you, right? So that hasn't changed. What probably has changed is, the realization that as you start to consume open source
Mhm.
in an enterprise environment, or in a company like Intuit, for example, there needs to be paid particular attention to scalability, ease of use, the user experience,
Mhm.
um, the security, legal, compliance issues that come about, right? So those are the things that I feel that every open source project
Mhm.
should probably think about at some point. And the most successful open source projects actually start with that. They have some sort of governance that is already built in, whether it's people, processes, to help them do that, right?
Mhm.
Argo did not start like that, right? For example, right? So in 2021 or 20, we had our first big scare. We had a major security vulnerability that was discovered in Argo.
Mhm.
It was also a realization that Argo had become significant because it was being used across the industry. So we suddenly got a lot of PR mentions, as a result of that. But that actually set us up for success because we really focused on some of these things. So as a leader, that's a realization that I've come to. Fundamentally, though, it hasn't changed my philosophy. And actually, at Intuit, one of the major tenets of how we select
Mhm.
software to be used, how we develop software, we have a very prescribed formula, right? We always look at the open source community first
Mhm.
to see what's out there, what innovation is going on, and whether we can actually leverage it. Barring that, we go to either our strategic partners or third-party vendors, right? So that actually has helped me shape Intuit's, tech stack and tech, strategy.
Awesome. And just a quick follow-up. So uh, now that you've become a leader, so now you have a lot of people in your organization. So how do you kind of give a open source first mindset to all your developers?
I think it's not about having an open source first mindset. First of all, it's a mandate, right? So,
Yeah.
right, we say that we want to look at open source first,
Mm.
right?
Yeah.
But that's not enough, right?
Mhm.
We also need to make sure that there are guardrails and there are systems and processes in place because you can't just go and take any open source project out there and suddenly put it into production.
Yeah.
So working with the leaders on my team, working with the engineers on the team,
Mhm.
we've come up with a very, very good set of principles about how we select open source projects, how we engage with that community, what we should be doing with that community, right? And by the way, I think it's not a matter about enforcing, or engineers typically love it, right? I mean, there's a lot of innovation that goes outside.
Yeah.
So there's a natural tendency for developers to be looking out in the community and seeing what's coming in. In fact, more often than not, engineers are coming to me and telling me about all the projects that are out there and what we should be using, right? So,
Awesome. The reason I was asking this question was, sometimes, of course, we all have businesses to run, right? But at the same time, we have open source wherein we have to contribute. It's the long term picture for the extended community. So, how do you balance these two as a leader?
I think the question you're asking is, first of all, is there a balance that you need to achieve between business outcomes and open source projects, right? That's not the question. But our priority always remains our customers
Mhm.
and making their lives easier, right? Empowering prosperity, making sure that they can grow, right? That's our focus. That's why we exist.
Mhm.
So everything we do is in service to our customers, right? So open source is, think of it as a vehicle to actually help us get there faster, okay? And to help our products get better. Right? So when you select open source projects, they should always be selected with that thought in mind. Is this actually helping us get
Mhm.
products and features or benefits to our customers faster? And that's, there shouldn't be a choice between, so if someone comes to me and says, I just want to spend time working on an open source project, and there's really no correlation between, Intuit's business or what we want to do, that's probably not the right priority for us, right? So I think, in answer to your question, open source projects, any other project that we do or software that we develop needs to be in service of our customers.
Got it. Yeah. I think that's the mindset we're all learning now. Like always start from the customer, think of it as a product, and then reverse engineer. Is open source is the right solution, or is there a faster way to do it? Right. Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Do you want to take any questions?
Yeah, sure. I do have some questions.
Yeah.
Actually, I have a question for you. How
Oh
about
yeah,
that?
sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
Okay, we
Of
didn't
course.
prepare
So,
for that, yeah.
How long have you been in open source?
So my open source career kind of started in my college days. So I'm basically a mechanical engineer from IIT Kharagpur. So for me to break out of mechanical engineering and get into software engineering, open source was kind of the window of opportunity. So kind of started in my second year of college. It started off with dual booting my laptop with Linux OS, and suddenly I saw the terminal, and it was like fun, right? So kind of started with that, and did a Google Summer of Code, and contributed to karate, and that also landed me with my role at Intuit. So it's in a way kind of shaped my career. So I just try to give back to the community whenever possible.
No, that's powerful. Yeah.
For me, I started with Hacktoberfest. Apparently, during school, during my college, actually, we had this Hacktoberfest, community that we were driving. That everyone would get a T-shirt. So everyone was like, we will do those 4 PRs. We attended some sessions. It was my second year, I guess. And then I came back to Intuit and I saw, oh, we do have more than T-shirts, and everything is very glamorous here. We do have inner projects to contribute to. And so, yeah, that's how I started. I contributed to Hacktoberfest. I was not part of the open source community last Hacktoberfest. Once I contributed, Aditya reached out that, hey, do you want to be part of this community? And then since then, we have reviewed lots of PRs, and we have reviewed projects. And I have seen a project from from Intuit to being open source. So that was I was not aware of the legal processes, the awareness that so that awareness I got to know. Like, when I got into community, then I got to know, okay, these things exist.
That's actually very interesting because I like two things, right? So one, cool swag, mini swag, right? Cool swag.
Yep.
Yeah.
But I think your story is really good because what it says is that open source typically is the right avenue to get into software development. If you and actually a lot of people, that's how they get in, right? So
Yeah,
good.
and especially in our college, right, we have 17 different departments, but there is only one CS department. So the rest of the folks who are interested in coding, predominantly open source is the window for them.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
Mostly everyone focused on DSA. So I guess open source and Hacktoberfest gives you the avenue to start into web development. That's how I started. The first REST API that I even got to know was through Hacktoberfest. Okay, these things, because else we all focus into DSA coding. And so as a leader, are there any books, podcasts that help you to stay on top of all the emerging OSS tech and the industry disruptions?
I think podcast is what I read a lot. I mean, I listen to, but I think the two that I follow very closely would be Changelog is the one that I follow, and then Floss. Not dental floss, okay, but so the Free Libre Open, right? So that's the one that I think those two are the ones that I will religiously just look at to see what's going on. And then every now and then I'll see other articles around. My Gmail account is usually set up to give me alerts on open source news. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of see what new technologies or products are coming out.
We do got. I do get one more channel. I'll add that to change one to my
Changelog.
Yeah.
And just to follow up to that, do you also watch any tech series on Netflix or Hotstar? As a leader, do you have time?
No, I don't watch too many tech. I like science fiction, so I do watch a lot of sci-fi, movies or events, But let's see. I don't know. There's the question of someone asked me like Star Trek or Star Wars, and I said the techie in me wants Star Trek, but the human in me wants Star Wars, So I like Star Trek from a tech perspective because it is grounded in science, it's grounded in sci-fi. A lot of ideas actually come out of it. So I think maybe Star Trek is probably the one from a tech perspective. Star Wars I love more than.
We do have another question for you. So, how would you describe the adrenaline rush of Oktoberfest using a famous movie quote?
I just told you I don't watch too many movies. uh, my favorite movies are John Wick, so I don't know. Is there a quote from there? I don't know. I don't think I could even use a quote from there, but maybe Clint Eastwood. Let's see. Here's one. Go ahead, make my day.
Wow.
Nice.
That's one. Do you know which movie it's from? Okay, I'll let you go research it. The audience can research
I'll
it.
get back with that. There's another. If you could have dinner with any open source pioneer, who would it be? You would
Open
have-
source pioneers there. Oh, there's so many.
And mirror is not the correct option.
No, I would say maybe like Richard Stallman, maybe Brian Ellendorf, maybe. I guess Linus would be one.
Yeah.
But the first, I mean, yeah, Richard, of course, and then Brian. I think they shaped the open source industry, right? They laid the foundation for what we call open source today. That would be good. I think Linus has had a huge impact.
Yep.
So that would be good. But there's so many. So
I guess that's the best part about open source. It's always about a community and not individuals.
yeah.
It's taken 40 years and a lot of different folks to come together to reach the stage we are at.
True.
So at Intuit, we focus a lot on driving speed to benefit for our customers. How does OSS contribute to improving the release velocity, especially from your perspective as an engineering leader?
Like I said, right, we can't invent everything,
Right.
and we have to move fast. We have to innovate. So that's where open source actually helps us because it actually helps drive large community projects that would be difficult for every company to reinvent or do. So I think that helps us with velocity because we can actually develop software faster by leveraging a lot of the open source stuff. For example, if you look at the AI revolution or the Gen AI revolution, right? There is so much activity going on in the open source space right now. And there's a whole lot of learning that's going on, and it's community learning. So it's probably the fastest way for us to learn, these things today.
Right? Can you share some of the Intuit's OSS accomplishments that you're particularly proud of?
I'm particularly proud of Argo, of course, for
Of
sure.
course.
Yeah, of course.
But we've had, for example, you mentioned karate. I mean, that was at Intuit, right? We have not just projects that we contribute, right? We have Auto, for example, another one that was contributed. So there's a lot of projects that Intuit has driven in the market. But we've been involved in the OSS community, for a longer time. So, for example, we're the founding members of the GraphQL Foundation, right? That's a relatively unknown fact that a lot of people don't know, but we are the founding members of the GraphQL Foundation. We contribute to the React, projects. So there's actually a whole host of areas and domains that we contribute to, and we shape these projects. Right? The scale at which we operate, the innovation that we drive in our products, that actually gives us a seat at the table of most large open source projects because we can help shape those projects with enterprise features that we need or new innovations that we can drive. And the beauty about that is that we can actually create and add to those innovations, right? So to me, I think that's the greatest benefit of Intuit is that not only are we creating new projects, but we're actually actively contributing to existing projects and making them better.
Awesome. And I think in the viewers, we may have a lot of folks who are developers, but who are yet to immerse themselves into open source. So for them, what would you suggest?
First of all, you never do an open source project just for the fun of it. I mean, you can, you can make it a hobby, and it'll be a hobby, and hopefully it'll become more than a hobby at some point. But look at which open source projects are being used in your area or domain, and get familiar with the code. Contribute. Right? It doesn't take much to contribute, right? And you can contribute in various ways. You can become part of the community by attending events or actually helping manage the events. Of course, you can write code, you can contribute documentation, you can actually help shape the roadmap, right? So there's a lot of ways that you can contribute, but stay grounded in solving a problem, a real customer problem, and then figure out how you can help that in the open source projects. Um, it also is a very good way of learning new things because there is no substitute for looking at code and seeing what's out there, and so I think just learning what's out there, getting engaged with the project is probably the fastest way to do this. But stay grounded, right? Also remember, I think a lot of people forget open source projects. The successful open source projects, they don't just happen. Okay, there's a lot of energy, a lot of hard work that goes into making them successful. It's no different than building a product. Okay, so I mean, but get started. You know.
Awesome.
We do have a quick this or that round for you.
This or that.
Yeah, you have to. There'll be two options. You have to choose one.
Okay.
Okay. So first one goes open source projects, small and frequent contributions or large and occasional ones.
Small and frequent.
Spaces or tabs.
Tabs.
OSS philosophy, release early, release often, or it's done when it's done.
Release early, release often.
Preferred OS, Linux, Mac, or Windows.
How about Gen OS?
So just a quick anecdote. So during the Hacktoberfest we had yesterday, so there was a really senior leader who talked about Pratik, saying Pratik is such a out of the box thinker that when you go to him with two options, A and B, he always says C. So, and it often turns out to be a better option.
I mean,
So,
was that a trick question or no?
It was.
Okay.
It was. We were expecting an answer like that.
Yeah.
Innovation approach, incremental or disruptive?
Disruptive. Based on my background, I've been in startups. I've always disrupted.
Right.
True.
And I think, to me, innovation is fastest when you disrupt.
Preferred learning source, books or podcast? I guess we got the answer for that. Yeah. Yeah. You want to go?
I think that's all we had really for the questions.
There is this one odd question that we have. Consider you come from a developer background too. What's the weirdest or most frustrating bug you have encountered?
Oh, there's lots of bugs. I think, okay, the most weirdest is probably, so my background is in systems distributed. I actually built appliances. And there was an appliance that we built which started smoking. So it was in data centers around the globe, and we started getting reports that your appliances are smoking, they're burning, right? And we could never figure out. So we knew that they were burning. We could never figure out why. It took us a long time to understand by going through the entire chain of components. And finally, we discovered that one of the boards that we were using, a particular batch, as the PCB was being etched, they are supposed to replace one of the tools, the bits, on a regular rhythm. And in this particular case, they had not. So there are layers in the PCB were shorting. So that took a lot of forensics to actually understand what was actually happening, and then to get back to that. So probably the most frustrating part, especially when customers are calling and saying, your data centers, if my data center is on fire or there's smoke in my data center, right? So
yeah, I think the issues we deal with today is like CI/CD is failing or
Right.
pipeline is failing, and compare it to your data center is in fire.
We couldn't deal with on that level. Yeah.
Yes.
It is literal firefighting.
Yes, it is firefighting. There you go. Yeah.
Awesome. And if you were to write a thank you note to the open source community overall, what would it be?
I think it would focus on the fact that my career and actually all the products that I've been associated with probably would not be possible without open source, right? In some way, shape, or form, right? And it's true today, right? I mean, if I were to look at any of our Intuit's products, I can bet you there's so much open source software that we're using internally. So the thank you would be to the community for actually fostering the innovation and really the community coming together and driving that, right?